Thank you all so much for being here tonight for this webinar for Altadena residents talking about recovery from the Eaton Fire and the road ahead for our town. This will be a 90-minute session. My name's John Mayo. I am an Altadena resident. I live on Madison Ave and Sacramento, just north of Woodbury. Um, Obviously, this is such a difficult time for our town, such a challenging time for residents, whether you have lost your house and are trying to figure out the road forward, or your house is still standing and you maybe have safety concerns, or you're looking for ways to support your community. There's just so much power in just the simple act of coming together. So thank you so much for taking time out of your evening to be here. A few housekeeping items up front. First of all, if you would like Spanish language translation services, we are dropping instructions in Spanish in the chat for how to access that. Because this is a webinar, your microphones and your cameras are disabled, but there is a chat that you can use at the bottom of the screen if you'd like to talk. There is also a Q&A where you can submit questions. We'll do our best to get all your questions answered, but we also took a bunch of questions ahead of time and kind of try to sift through and find the recurring themes. So we'll start with those. To access both the chat or the Q&A, it's at the bottom of your screen. You might have to click the More button and then find chat and Q&A. I hear some folks introducing themselves in the chat. That's great. So lastly, in case you need to leave early tonight, or if you want to share this with somebody else, we are recording this session and we will send out an email when the recording is ready to everybody who's in this call. So if we have your email address, then we're going to send you a link where you can watch this later. So, okay, with that, we've got an amazing group of people here tonight that we're going to hear from. First, we're going to hear from some locals about the work that is happening in our community and support that they can provide moving forward. Then the bulk of the session, the whole last hour, is going to be dedicated to a panel discussion with this organization after the fire. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Council Member and Vice Chair of the Altadena Town Council, Nick Arnzen. Take it away,
Thank you,
Nick.
John. Hi, everybody. What a terrible 2 weeks, but I'm so happy to see us unite on this screen and so many others in person and throughout town. While we might feel alone trapped on this screen, we know we're not. We know that we're going to be coming together as a full community. So I just want to encourage everybody to go beyond these screens and remember we're not isolated, that my work in the weeks and months to come will be to indeed form these coalitions to both recover and rebuild. So I'm just happy to be here, honestly, to listen and to take in what's going on. As a council member, that's always been my job, to not really have my own opinion, but to amplify the community's voice, their concerns. So I'm listening and I am with you 100%.
All right, thank you so much, Council Member Arnzen, and thank you for being here. Next, we have with us tonight Pablo Alvarado. Pablo is a legendary LA community organizer. He's the co-executive director of the National Day Laborer Organizing Network. So over to you, Pablo. Thanks so much for being here.
No problem. Thank you for inviting me. I've been a Pasadena resident for a long time, since 1992. And this has been my city, and I love this place and the community. Love the folks in Altadena very much. And I am the co-executive director of Andelon, which stands for National Day Labor Organizing Network. And it's I don't know if it's a coincidence or a blessing that our headquarters are here in Pasadena, and we run the Pasadena Community Job Center. And I can share some of the work that we've been doing here in this out of this little place here, the Pasadena Community Job Center. So we have the uh, it's not just I can say it's not a food bank. It's beyond a food bank, and we have had thousands of volunteers that have come in for the last 13 days. I think it's been 13 days, and we are getting so many donations of articles and fresh produce, things that people need in this moment of difficulty. And it's been an operation that's been I hope that it's impacting and helping families that are suffering so much, and we have, I believe, during on a for example, the distribution today was from 10 to 3 p.m. and we had over 500 residents that came with their vehicles to get from wipes, diapers, food, clothing, everything that comes into the center goes out, and it's very fluid. People are bringing resources. We put the call out on social media, and we tell people these are the needs, and then it's been uh, a pouring of love and solidarity and kindness. And as people come in, people from all walks of life are coming in, and we are providing as much as we can. And as I said, everything is going out from PPE to um, articles for babies, medicine, you name it. So that's one aspect of our operation. The second aspect is that we have the fire relief brigades, and it's essentially it's about 12 brigades that have been going street by street. The first part was because we have a group of day laborers here who are chainsaw operators. So the first day was to cut trees and unblock driveways and streets. And ever since it's grown into this beautiful operation. And then we have day laborers who are bringing their trucks. The city has designated a place where we're taking the waste. And it's been beautiful to see immigrants, migrant workers going into the communities and lending a hand to the community that gives them work. The day laborers have lost so many employers who live in in the Altadena, Pasadena area because they've lost their homes. Stories of people coming in telling us this is all I have, what I have on. My apartment burned down, but not only that, my employer's house burned down, and that's how interconnected we are. And the fires, in my view, have interrupted that beautiful socioeconomic fabric of our community, and we are looking forward to do and work with everyone to rebuild that socioeconomic fabric, so of our communities. And it's an honor to be able to serve all the beautiful people of Altadena and Pasadena.
Thank you so much, Pablo. Thank you for sharing that, and thank you for the work you're doing in the community. Altadena really appreciates it. We love our neighbors to the south. Next, we are going to hear from Rachel Bullock. Rachel, take it away.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel Bullock. I'm an architect and a displaced Altadena resident. And we have been hearing about a lot of people already getting approached by developers to buy their land. If you haven't already heard, there is an executive order from Governor Newsom that prohibits undervalued land speculation for 90 days. If you go to the altagether.org website, we've linked to the form that reports offenders, which if you could please do that, that would be great. And on that note, we recognize that rebuilding is going to be prohibitive for a lot of people, but hold off selling if you can. We're here to help support you through the process, and we're exploring lots of avenues to figure out how to help you rebuild. So don't hesitate to reach out to us if you need help navigating your options. One option we're looking at is a community land trust model. And we actually have Matthew Vu with us, who is the president of the Beverly Hills, Vermont Community Land Trust. And he's just going to give us a quick overview of what a CLT is. If you're interested in getting involved with the CLT or any other housing efforts, please email us at info@altagether.org. And there will be more information coming down the pipeline about this soon. So, Matthew, if you want to tell us what a CLT is.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me in this space. Again, my name is Matthew Vu. I'm the board president of the Beverly-Vermont Community Land Trust. We're based out here predominantly in Koreatown along Beverly and Vermont near the metro. And we steward over 60 units of permanently affordable housing from North Hollywood to K-Town. So I was asked to come to speak about community land trust because a lot of folks have been reaching out to me about how do we rebuild without risk of speculation, displacement, and people being forced to be refugees twice, right? Refugees from the climate disaster and then refugees from speculation. And the community land trust model is something that people have explored for decades now. It was originally organized by civil rights leaders in Georgia as a way to help solidify and stabilize Black farm workers, working families, and prevent them from being displaced by corporate landlords, corporate farm workers, right? And so we've adopted this model for the urban use. And what we do is we hold land for community benefit. Oftentimes that's permanently affordable housing, that's building co-ops, that's building new ownership pathways for people who had never had ownership opportunities before. And it's about driving it's about centering a resident-owned, resident-governed, community-driven development plan. So if this sounds like something that you are interested in, if you've seen a lot of despair and you want to make sure that we're whole again by bringing everyone back home, a right to remain, a right to return, that if that jives with you, I'd love to continue having conversations with that with you. I'm going to put my contact information in the chat. Also, right now, we're working on a policy called the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act, which would help tenants who are displaced or at risk of being displaced have an opportunity to buy their home. And so there's a lot of opportunities for us to reach out. And I see in the chat that a lot of us are very community-minded and reaching out to see how we can build back together. This might be something worth your while. So I'm not going to try to sell it. If you want to see what we do, our website is www.bvclt.org. In 2021, we bought a fourplex and we helped turn it into a co-op. So now the residents own their building. That's just an example of, the things that we can do together. So thank you so much for your time.
All right. Thank you, Matt. That's awesome. And thank you, Rachel, also. So in a moment, I am going to turn things over to After the Fire. Thanks. I love the activity that we're seeing in the chat and people putting questions in the Q&A too. Thank you so much. Please keep the energy up. And again, we're going to send a recording of this too. So if you need to drop early for some reason. So before I turn things over to After the Fire, I want to talk a little bit about community organizing. Something that these folks are going to talk about is what they call the zone captain model of community organizing. This is something that has worked in the past in places that have been affected by wildfires. The basic idea is getting folks to sign up to take responsibility for their neighborhood, for some set of houses, few streets, the people immediately in your area. Just being a point of contact for people and helping them get the resources and information that they need. So I I worked as a community organizer on the second Obama campaign. I just worked on the Harris campaign as a training person supporting organizers. So when I think about how I can contribute to my town and my community, that's where my mind goes. I've lived in Altadena since 2019. It's my favorite town in the world. It's my favorite place I've ever lived. It's the only place I want to live in Los Angeles. So I think everybody on this call, like I'm determined to stay and I'm determined to help rebuild this town. So I'm trying to figure out how I can contribute. And like I'm not an architect. I don't know anything about zoning. You probably don't want to put a nail gun in my hands. But I'm willing to talk to people. And I'm willing to help organize systems to help people get the information and resources they need. So if you're on this call, I think that's something that you could do also. And I just ask you to keep that in mind as you hear about the zone captain model. Connecting with our neighbors is a huge piece of how we can ensure a collective recovery for Altadena where nobody gets left behind. And it's something we could use your help with. So just know we're actively recruiting for zone captains. We'd love to hear from you. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Jennifer Gray Thompson.
Thank you, John and Rachel, and all of you for hosting us. I'm Jennifer Gray Thompson. I'm the CEO and founder of a nonprofit called After the Fire USA. We were actually born in the middle of a fire as another organization, thinking that it would just be our fire. We'd have like 5 years to rebuild. But then we learned after doing a lot of mutual aid in the Camp Fire and the Woolsey Fire and then the 2020 fire season, we recognized that the era of mega fires was upon us, but there wasn't enough collective knowledge and care, and there weren't enough avenues to actually share our lessons, and we didn't want to see people have to reinvent everything. We actually started paying it forward in 2018, 13 months after our own unprecedented disaster, where across 4 counties, we lost 8,900 structures. In Sonoma County, where I live, and some of these people also live you're going to meet tonight, we lost 5,900. Nobody had ever seen that before, and what you've just seen happen in your town and in all of your towns is bigger. But I do want you to know that we have seen this before on many different scales. That it may feel super hopeless right now, but you can actually get to the other side. And many of these people who've lost their homes, they are home again. And so much of that is attributed to community. We have formed our own community of mega fire communities that are all in the process of rebuilding from Sonoma to Maui. Many of these people have walked into other towns with me, or I've walked into their town and then asked them to come along. We do not charge communities, and we do not fundraise locally. We fundraise privately, and so that way we are agnostic when we walk in. The entire community is our client, so to speak. I put together a pretty big panel for you here. There's a lot of knowledge. Just think of this as the first touch point. You don't have to memorize all of it. If you can't hold it to, all the thoughts, don't worry about it. We all know what fire brain is like and that it's very hard, and you have to have a lot of grace during this time for yourself, for your family, for your neighbors, and extra grace, in fact, even when it's really hard. I curate really cool, wonderful people who've been through the worst experience of their lives as you have. And by curating, I meet a lot of people, but I really choose people who understand that we are a service-based model, meaning that we listen and then figure out how we can support you for the immediate, mid, and long term until you're all the way home. And so it's really an adaptable, not adoptable model. We listen and we learn along with you. And really what we ask is that at some point, if you're an effective leader, then I may say to you, hey, do you mind coming along to the next one? And that's a really important part of it. So I'd like to introduce you. I'd like the panel to introduce themselves. And I'm actually going to go ahead and start with Riva Feldman.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Riva Feldman, and I'm a retired city manager from the city of Malibu. My experience with Megafire started in 1993 when I had family lose a home in Malibu in the Topanga Malibu fire, and I was the last one in the home and the first one back to find it burned. And since then have been through about 6 mega fires where I've either participated actively during the disaster or helped with recovery. I retired from public service a few years ago, and I have a small firm, and I work with Jennifer Gray Thompson at After the Fire, supporting her and the efforts that we do. And I just wanted to thank your organizers who are bringing your community together during a really difficult time. I know how hard this is, and you will get through it. I know most of you never set out to be home builders, and there's a lot of complicated steps, and we are here as your friends and your partners and a lifeline to help you walk through all of these complicated procedures and processes and words and things that will be coming up. So thank you for including me, and hang in there. I promise it will get better.
Thank you, Riva. And I'm seeing a question. Just so you know, there are people here who have smoke damage, people whose homes survived, and people who are total loss survivors. So you have all of the above. And we recognize that it's a spectrum. With that, I'm going to go to Jen Kausch.
It's like I forgot how to Zoom. Hi, everybody. I'm Jen Kausch. I'm from Colorado with the Marshall Fire in late 2021. And I just want to say, before the fire quite literally came to my doorstep, I had no experience in fire recovery. This was so for all of you kind of starting this journey. I know it feels daunting and overwhelming, and it's a whole new language, and it's a lot. So just know that you're not alone, and there's a lot of empathy and space for you to go through this process. I came home to find one side of my street had been totally lost to the fire, and my side was still there. And so I started just helping my direct neighbors, and that turned into helping the community, and that turned into starting a nonprofit to advocate for residents. And I hear John talking, and I want to say, you're primed up for this. So the next thing I did was run for office to help the community at a larger policy level. And so I was elected, and now I'm on the city council. And after the fire came to our community, just a couple months after our fire, and it was a light in the dark for us, and so appreciated. We didn't know what to do next, whether we were total loss or smoke damage. And so it was kind of the path. And I've since joined After the Fire, advocating in Washington, D.C. and in Maui as well, supporting with their recovery. So.
Thank you. I'm going to go in the order I can see you. So Mr. Tennis Wick.
Good evening, everybody. Tennis Wick. I'm a permit director in County of Sonoma, and I work in emergency operations. Worked with this group quite a bit here in California, over in Lahaina, supporting survivors from Hurricane Helene in North Carolina. So unfortunately, this has become a multifaceted experience all over the country. So with that, the encouragement I can offer you is that what I see happening with the County of Los Angeles. So I'm working with my peer there, who's a close friend, Amy Bodek. They are moving quickly. And we are, because many of us have been through this before, we are sharing documents and processes with them to help accelerate things. So I think you're gonna see stock plans that are available, and we can talk about what those are, but basically simplify the design world for you. And I think people like Rachel Bullock in your community are going to be able to help greatly there. We're talking with the California Energy Commission about taking it easy on building requirements, recognizing how expensive solar and storage can be, and looking for other ways of getting contributions to meet the objective without saddling fire survivors with unnecessary costs at a time when you're rebuilding your lives. So hang in there, and look forward to your questions. We always had some good ones, and I'll wait till Q&A before I respond. Thanks.
Thank you, Tennis. Brad Sherwood.
Hi, good evening. Brad Sherwood, Tubbs Fire survivor, live in unincorporated Sonoma County. I just point that out because I think there are some specifics in how do you rebuild with the city jurisdiction versus unincorporated. Complete loss, lost our home, got out only with seconds. At the time, my son was 7, my daughter was 5. Wow, how 7 years has flown. We all made it out safely, and we were able to rebuild our home within a year and a half. I've got a link with some photos of my rebuild because I think it's important to show the timeline on what a rebuild looks like. And I will just say, first and foremost, after the Fire USA, I'm a volunteer and I spend my vacation time with this group and with Jennifer because of the mission and the people and the support they provided our community in our rebuild. We were able to rebuild quickly because of the collaboration and the community that was driven by Jennifer and her volunteers, hands down. And I just want to also say, having Tennis Wick on this panel is gold. If it was not for the County of Sonoma developing its Recovery and Resiliency Center and permit process, we would not have been able to rebuild as quickly and efficiently as possible. That is key. You have 2 key individuals to help this community rebuild. And what I hope I can offer is how we developed a community block captain program with the lead and support of our elected officials, specifically Supervisor James Gore. So with that, I just want to say I look forward to the discussion and how to help build a block captain and community to get you back in your homes.
Thank you, Brad. I do think he gives me a little too much credit there, just so that you know, but I'm going to let it stand. This week, you can actually see in today's LA Times an article that Brad is in. And then this week, another one that Jeff Okrepke, our next intro, is he rebuilt inside of the city limits. He converted from renter to owner and was instrumental in organizing his own community, just like Brad was. And so take it away, Jeff.
Thank you, Jennifer. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jeff Okrepke. I survived with my family the 2017 Tubbs fire. We had I guess it would be 22-month-old son at the time when we escaped. After the fire, I helped organize some of my neighbors, and we formed a nonprofit called Coffee Strong, which incorporated as a 501c3 nonprofit. And with the help of Jennifer's organization and others, we helped rebuild our community, whether that be working with the city to be more efficient and effective, or community-centered projects that needed to be done, finding out after the fact that things were not as easy as we once thought. So, and much like Jen Kausch, I started this nonprofit, went through the rebuild process, moved in, and then was convinced to run for office, and I was elected to the Santa Rosa City Council 2 years ago. So I'm glad to be here to impart any knowledge I might have that may help you all out.
Thank you, Jeff. And then our final panelist, but certainly not least, is Raina Pomeroy.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me too. I'm laughing because apparently you become a fire survivor, you become a leader, you start a nonprofit, and then you run for office is the path I'm hearing. I didn't run for office, but I survived the Marshall Fire. We were a total loss, and we got back home about a year ago, which puts us at the 2-year mark post-fire. And basically everything that Brad said about community and organizing and that helping to streamline getting home is exactly what I wanted to say. I didn't know anybody here, and I didn't know anything about fire. And when Jennifer brought Brad and Jeff and another person from another fire, we were filled with hope that we hadn't felt in a long time, and or had never felt post-fire. And I think it was just a moment of like, okay, there's other people who have lived through this. And that's what I'm hoping that this panel will be able to give you, because this is a whole lot of brain power from fire survivors and people who have navigated. I built a grassroots community organization called Altagether. We did form a 501c3, and we also stood up a Slack that allowed us to connect everyone who was displaced from our fire. And that was really important to us because information was scarce. Actually, it wasn't scarce. It was just bad information all over from all of the text chains, WhatsApps, and we wanted to centralize it to just fire survivors. And that actually allowed us to be able to mobilize quicker, organize a lot of different groups and a lot of different folks, and bring people together for conversation and in a digital environment. It's not perfect. So a combination of what Brad was talking about and a virtual model could be something that Altadena could adopt too. And I'm happy to help in any way I can.
Thank you, Raina. You'll see that Raina has started a virtual community for the LA fires, and she has a doc. We have many documents. Everything that's shared in the chat, we're actually going to make into a pretty document and send back to the organizers. So don't panic if you're missing something. I also want to say this. This is not the first time that, I mean, this is the first time. It's not the last time. If you don't get your question answered, we can do follow-ups. Just go through your people who are your organizers here and ask for what it is that you want and what you need. And that's how we respond, is to the community in front of us. So it's really important. And now we can go to questions. I think Adam's going to come back on. Is that right?
I'm going to ask the questions.
Oh,
actually.
I'm so sorry.
That's
Okay,
okay.
go ahead.
No, and everyone had so many, so let's get into them. We're going to start with the timeline and environmental concerns. Can you all give us a timeline to understand what realistically we should expect going forward in this process? What should our priorities be now versus later? What can wait and what cannot?
I'm actually going to punt that part to Tennis to start us off.
So it's my understanding is it's different in the city than it is in the county. And I got to say that the process is moving. When we look at our experiences where it was quite linear, it wasn't until the fire was fully contained that they even started the environmental clearance process, which is the first step in getting your lot ready for redevelopment. But that's already underway. In some parts of the burn zone. That's gratifying that it's starting to overlap. My understanding is that because of the scale of destruction, Cal OES has said we can't manage this right now. So they're bringing in the U.S. Army Corps, which has its trade-offs. Depending on who you get as the commanding officer and the consulting firms that they work with, it's really good to be vigilant. Our experience in the Tubbs fire, and Jeff and Brad, I hope neither one of you were the recipient of this, but we had literally kind of the demonstration of how not to do it and the demonstration of how to do it. It was a very large corporation that hired subcontractors, and unfortunately their contract was written to remove, they were paid by the weight. So immediately we saw over excavation of properties. And what that left people with was a pool where their house used to be. And then they had to bring in fill and what's called surcharge to get the land ready for redevelopment. And that added cost and delay and frustration. The other contractor was compensated based on performance criteria, one of which was take away the debris, but leave the site in a construction capable condition. So that's something that I would, everybody have eyes on it and make sure that your lots are not being abused, but they're being responsibly cleared, because that's what's going to get you to get back on the site as quickly as possible.
Now, a good thing is that they have gotten much better in 7 years, and we just happen to be the first big one out the gate. And so a lot of the mistakes that we made, and I say we as a collective community, we will share and be honest with you, or things that we ran into. But please do know that the learning curve has improved since then, but it remains imperfect. And so as long as we're on environmental, I was wondering if Jen, because this actually pertains to that, can you talk about when you go home and your home is still standing, that environmental aspect of it? I'm sorry to I just want to make sure that we link that.
Yeah. Sure. So I had a smoke damaged home, and I've been connecting with a lot of folks in LA that are experiencing that, and there's not really a clear model for how you recover from that. The variables are on a wide spectrum, and it depends on your insurance and where the wind was blowing. I mean, there's just so many factors to what that can look like for a standing home. So when you are able to return to the community, I like to tell people really, the first thing you need to do is get an industrial hygienist report. That's the only way to tell what toxins are in your home. The insurance companies will typically like to go with the lower cost option of a restoration company coming in and wiping everything down, but that's not going to clean it properly. And so unfortunately, some insurance companies will offer, but most are going to create a situation where you really have to advocate for yourself and come in directly and ask for that pre and post cleanup industrial hygienist report. And I realize most people have never even heard of this before, but they're going to come into your house and they're going to check everything and be able to tell you what's there. And that's how you know how to build your remediation plan. Without that, you're kind of guessing, and there is no way to tell if it was cleaned properly. So I highly recommend that. And this is, I've been telling folks, if there's no insurance and you need this report, this is a great GoFundMe ask. If there's something you're going to spend money on, this is definitely one of those things. And when you do come back, and I imagine it's going to take a bit of time for them to start the debris cleanup process, they are eventually going to cover the debris in a way with a kind of an overlay that will keep the ash and debris under cover so that it's not blowing around openly in the air. I think a lot of people are worried about moving back once their home is clean, but the debris is still there. And so for our community, we found that was really helpful and didn't know it was going to happen. And it was a huge relief. So I'm hoping the debris gets cleaned up quickly, but if it does take longer, they're going to do some things to mitigate the open debris just, being there in your communities. Gosh, what else? I think that really I think people want to know what's going to happen next and how do I get back home as quickly as possible. These things are going to take weeks to months. And if they're finding toxins in your house, it's going to take months to many months to clean it up properly. We were in a hotel for 6 months, and I started with thinking I would be there for 1 month, and then I extended another month and another month. And what I wish I had done was just secure a 3 to 6 month lease somewhere so our family was in stable housing. And so if there's an opportunity for you to do that, I would recommend that for sure.
And I wanted to just add in how important that is to try and secure a place to live, whether you're in a smoke damage situation or a total loss. We already had a housing crisis here in Los Angeles. I am local, I do live here, and it's just been made worse by the 2 fires. And so I highly encourage everybody, just find a place. It will not be your dream home, but it will be a place for you to have a home base to start the rebuilding process.
Thank you, Reva. Next question.
You all did a great job answering a lot of these questions that came in, so thank you for that. But we got a lot of questions about debris removal, so I did want to hone in on that a little bit more. Can you all explain how that works? And is the system that Jen was talking about going to be something that we can expect everyone to do, or is it something we need to demand? What does the debris removal situation look like next?
I feel like since we have tennis on this call that we should take tennis, but then punt it to Brad and go from there.
Yeah, I think it would be. All I can tell you is in my discussions with county officials, things are moving fast. As Jen mentioned, they have learned from past mistakes. Still requires vigilance. I mean, we're all humans. So I think actually a lot of tonight in listening from the survivors on our panel about what you can expect and what you need to see from the outside, from their perspective, it looks different than when you're in the government doing the stuff. So also absolutely best communication line were these block captains or zone captains that brought information directly back to the survivor community, made my job much more effective. So I punted to my friends.
Yeah, I guess I'll follow up on that, Tennis. In terms of from a wildfire survivor's perspective, um, on my timeline on the website I put up, two key documents were put on our lot before the debris removal was done, and that was number one, the county came out and put a conditional statement on, what condition was this house? Was it built in what era? Asbestos. And then there was the stamp of approval from the EPA once the hazards were removed and the lot was then cleared for debris removal. And that was very important to track as a homeowner, that process. And I won't kid you, I was pretty much at my lot or in my neighborhood at least probably every other day. As a block captain, that was our goal, to have someone in the neighborhood and to follow who and when what properties got posted for hazard clearance. Because as soon as our property got posted for hazard clearance, we were told to expect a call from the County Resiliency Center within the next few weeks on a debris cleanup date. And sure enough, we got the call. We were in Sacramento with family for Christmas, and we got the call the day after Christmas that, hey, the Army Corps is going to come and clean up your lot tomorrow. And so my wife and I ran back to Santa Rosa from Sacramento to be there, and came back every day for 5 days to watch our lot get cleared. I would highly recommend you be there, and find out when your lot's being cleared and be there every day. Because if you do have a tree that survived, if you do have something that you want to keep on the property, you need to put caution tape around that. You need to talk to the staff on the scene so they don't mess up anything that you don't want them touching. So that's a little bit of advice there. I'm sure Jeff probably has some similar advice.
I'm going to go to Jeff and then actually Raina too. I would like to say this. There are 3 different stages to it. And so it's a little bit of patience. So the first one is, unfortunately, when there are fatalities, and there always are fatalities, we have to give time and space for that. It's a sacred time. It's very hard to be impatient, and especially if, it's hard to navigate that, but it's very important. And then the EPA comes in, they remove like all the batteries and the things that are extremely dangerous. But don't be fooled. What's left behind is still dangerous. And then you are allowed to go in and do your sifting. And then you do have the right to be on your property when they are doing the removal of it. That's true. You do have to sign a right of entry. Do not believe any disinformation that the government's trying to take your land or anything like that's not what's happening. But if one person in a neighborhood or in a line does not fill that out, it can become problematic for the other people who are trying to move a little faster. The next thing that I want to say is yours is going to go faster because as Biden was leaving, he said we'll pay for everything for 180 days, and debris removal falls under that. It's within the interest of the state and your local jurisdictions to get as much done in that period of time as possible, because we do not know how or if they will help us after that for at least a couple of years. And so I just wanted to put that out there, that you are in a kind of a game changer space. And I do think you'll see your cleanup completed in a year or less. Jeff?
Yeah, I think Tennis and Brad covered a lot of it. What I would say is in the city limits, and I'm not sure if they did in the county because I didn't pay too much attention to what was going on in the county because that's not where my neighborhood is. But we allowed the workers to go 24 hours a day in the burn area to remove debris because we knew that no one was going to build back in time to be there while that debris was being removed. There were the people that lived there, and those people were given notice, and it is uncomfortable for the people that survived, whose houses survived. But the one thing I would say is get to know the process of how it works, because one of the things that we had go is we thought like, oh, if our neighbors is getting cleared, then ours is next. And it's like, no, it's literally whoever the contractor is they're like, here's 5 lots, go. And those could be anywhere in the area that they're working. They're not contiguous lots. It's unfortunately not an efficient method. But in our case, we were able to get 2 to 3 lots cleared per contracting, I don't know what you want to call them, squad or group a day. I see there's a question about should we not sift through the debris yet. I would say let the EPA clear it first and then go, but still wear the proper PPE. Because one of the things you will see with debris removal is they're required to hose it down, so the ash and this as they go doesn't go up into the air. So there are, just because the batteries are taken away and cadaver dogs have gone through doesn't mean it's necessarily 100% safe. Even when they remove the debris, they have to do what's called burrito wrapping, which means wrap it up completely so that nothing flies off during transport. So I would wait if you can.
Thank you, Jeff. And Raina, do you want to go? Oh, by the way, in Lahaina, by the time the Army Corps got to Lahaina, they do it more in blocks and not as haphazard as we had it. So there's hope for everyone yet. Go ahead, Raina.
Yeah, ours was in blocks as well, and they contacted like 5 or 7 at a time. Okay, so one thing I wanted to mention is that at your DRC, I haven't confirmed this. Jennifer, do you know if they have the sifters at the DRCs yet?
Reva might know. We know that they're ordered. We worked with Amazon, and we're not even the only organization for the last year to pre-position all this stuff just in case 2 hours away. They're definitely going to have them. They're going to be on site. It was very controlled in Lahaina, and also the PPE. Samaritan's Purse will be there to actually be there for people and to help them. So it will be very organized. They've made that very clear.
Yeah, so when we did ours, there were 2 organizations that were available to help us with our sifting, and it took us 8 hours. Our lot is not very big, and somehow it took pretty much all day. And so if you want to do it by yourself and you have a targeted spot on your property that you want to sift, that makes a lot of sense. And also please wear your PPE because the dust does fly around quite a bit. But we were able to recover some things that are precious to us. My neighbor did not. And so it's sort of like the emotional toll of like what you might find and what you might not find. So
thank you.
Yeah.
I will say that when I watch news stories and I see kids playing all around the ruins of their homes with their families, it's very people don't know that's all the chemicals, everything that went into building houses and cars and plastic. It is not normal ash. This is not a campfire. It's oily. It's absolutely full of chemicals. So please be mindful of that and take good care of yourself. We just didn't know in the same way, but we want better for you. Okay, next question.
We're going to move on to insurance. What tips do you have for navigating this insurance process? And especially, how did you make your insurance money last as long as possible?
Oh, this is going to be a big one. Let's go, Jeff. And then Jeff, can you punt it to Jen to talk about smoke damage insurance? And then anybody else from the panel for the rebuilders wants to weigh in.
Sure. Extending your insurance is unfortunately not something that insurance companies are usually up for. You're probably gonna have to fight to get full limits and to fight to get every single inch, especially in a situation like this where they're gonna have to do so many payouts for everything. One thing I always tell people about this situation is you're gonna have multiple adjusters, and that's not just for each coverage, right? So you're gonna have a claim adjuster for your structure, a claim adjuster for your contents, and a claim adjuster for your additional living expenses, or ALE. But those are what they call disaster adjusters. So those are people that come in that are used to total losses, not like a kitchen fire or, a fender bender, people that are used to total losses. What's going to happen is those people will rotate out and you'll get new ones. So the biggest piece of information I can give when it comes to insurance is document everything. Don't agree to anything over the phone. Confirm via email, store those emails, because it's not necessarily that they're going to try to, pull one over on you, but you could get somebody new and the last person didn't document it in their system, and you're gonna have to go through the entire process again. Another thing is when it comes to the contents insurance, you're gonna have to do your personal inventory, which is a daunting task, where they're gonna ask you how many pairs of jeans did you have, how many forks did you have, what was on your walls. The way I look at it is, if someone's like, hey, this is gonna take me like 10 hours to do, I look at it as, okay, but if it's $250,000 in coverage, you're working $25,000 an hour, essentially, to get this work done. And then on ALE, it's going to be up to your community and your governments as to what they want to do. But insurance companies will let you buy RVs with your ALE. We had people that bought RVs or fifth wheels and moved them onto their lots and hooked them up to the electric and the sewer, just to get people back onto their properties and allow them to be there so that they didn't have to worry about their additional living expenses run out. Another thing, and I don't know if the county did this, I assume the county did, is allowing you to use to build ADUs first, so you can move into the ADU. Dennis is shaking his head. So yeah, so they did to allow you to move into your ADU first while the rest of your house is being built, so you can get out of a hotel. Or if you're like my case, me, my wife, our two dogs, and my son were living at my parents' house, and that was untenable. So we needed to get out of there as quickly as possible. And so those are my recommendations. I have plenty when it comes to insurance, but I don't want to take up too much time.
Jen?
Yeah, I want to add, when you're working on recovery, and I think this probably goes for total loss homes as well, like you're the driver in the experience with your insurance. I think a lot of people take a long time waiting for permission to do what they need to do for their property. And I want people to know that, like, you're their client, right? You are running this show, and they can deny things, but you should ask for every damn thing that you want. And it in the process of it, I've seen so many people be very passive, and they're waiting for the insurance company to direct them and tell them, and they're going to give you the lowest cost option. And so I want people to have permission to advocate for yourself. And like Jeff said, I heard this time, I wish I had done it, but start a new email address for the fire. So you have everything in one place, because I had it all over the place. And at some point later, there'll be options for funding and things where you're going to need to show what you've paid for, what wasn't covered. And it was a lot of work to find it and remember, because as Jennifer said earlier, fire brain is real. You may have to hear something 6 times before it sticks. So this helps a lot. And when the adjuster changes, whether it's intended or not, a new adjuster will want you to spend your energy catching them up on your claim. You don't have time for that. So if it's all in an email, you can just turn it over to them and say, "You catch yourself up. Let me know when you've gotten there, and we'll go from there." So it will just save you a lot. As far as smoke damage, I think people feel a lot of rush to get back to their house because it's there, and there's this fake pressure of not wanting to spend so much or hurrying up to get back to the property. And if there's any way to remove that, they are there to cover your living expenses while your home's being remediated. And however long that takes, and keeping them up to speed on the projects or the timelines for extensions, and just kind of keeping an open relationship with them for that is super helpful. But you can ask for things once your home's clean, like HEPA filters, AQI, to go on your home, whatever you need to keep control over the safety in the space that was cleaned, and the exterior, you're living in debris or a construction zone. You can ask for that from them, and I have not seen them not pay for it. So really, if you think of it, ask. The worst thing that they will say is no.
Brad, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I wanted to show something if I could. My wife was like, "You got to show everybody this." We got out of the ashes box. This came, like hundreds of these came to our fire survivors from San Diego, and we still use it 7 years later. But to what Jen was saying, keep every record, every receipt. And if you're like us, we had to move around 5 different times in the matter of a year to finally get into a long-term rental. This box and this very simple filing cabinet saved our bacon when it came to fighting the insurance companies to get every penny back from our policy. So just little simple things can make a big difference.
Really quickly, Brad, just say how long until you were home, because they're going to like that.
Yeah, so the fire happened October 2017. We were back in August of 2019.
Thank you.
And the first house in Santa Rosa and Coffee Park that got certificate of occupancy was the end of May 2018. Now that's very quick, and he did salvage his foundation, but that's how quickly we were able to turn around some housing.
That was 18 months. In Lahaina, they were at about 16 months for the first completed. They did a lot of Ohanas too, so love that. Raina?
Marshall Fire was 12 months, which was absolutely bananas.
Mhm. Very unusual, but it's great. By the way, we're going to drop some information in the chat. For those of you who, if you're, no matter if you're a renter, if you're just affected in any way by the disaster, which of course all of you are, Fannie Mae actually pays for this nonprofit to do financial counseling after a disaster. They can help you navigate everything from FEMA, they're HUD approved, they're trauma informed. They're supposed to give you the same person for 18 months for free. And they can help walk you through FEMA denials, SBA, talking to your credit card company, all of those things. If you are an owner, you can also go to Fannie Mae to find out who's the underwriter on your mortgage. That matters because there's different policies that your underwriter determines, not your lender. Your underwriter can say, you can push your one year of your mortgage to the very end of the term. So your 30 year becomes the 31 year without it being a balloon payment. But you do have to communicate and go through a process, but those things are available to you to give you some breathing room. You just need to ask really important questions of your lender at that point. Like, I'm going to do this. I'll communicate with you, but I need to make sure you're not reporting this to my credit report either, because sometimes those mistakes are made. But you can go to know your options, and we'll put that in the chat. Find out who owns your mortgage. And because Freddie and Fannie both do it, and that's half the mortgages in this country, it really influenced the rest of the market. So ask for that deferment if that works for you. And then also we're going to put something on there about don't pay off your mortgage. It can make it harder to get a construction loan. It feels like the most natural thing to do, but in fact, it's not often the correct thing to do. And so make sure that you're getting good financial advice and that you follow the information they've given you.
Our next question is, how did you manage all of the paperwork and things you have to do while struggling with your intense grief?
Oh, such a good question. Raina, why don't I start with you this time?
I'm so sorry. I was in the chat. Can you say that one more time?
Yes. How did you manage all of the paperwork and all the things that you have to do while struggling with intense grief?
Oh man. Great question. So it took me a while. So I just want to say that it took me a while. It was definitely not in the first 2 weeks. We definitely started the first conversations with insurance and applied for the FEMA stuff and did all of that paperwork. But it took me some time. And I think that depending on what your situation is, whether you're a renter, you're a total loss, there's many variables. I think that the first thing I want to say is, like, it took me a while to get any sleep and also like get proper housing. And so until that was sorted, I really couldn't focus on anything. And like Firebrain is incredibly real. So that's the first part of it. And then the second part is, like, I started watching all of the workshops and webinars just like you are tonight, because I felt like that was like the first touch point of like real information, when all the other folks or all the other places it just felt like we were sharing information, but we didn't really know what the source was. And so in terms of paperwork, I think like documenting everything, like folks have already said, writing down every conversation you have with every adjuster. I think we had 3 adjusters in the first few weeks that we were on our journey, which was really frustrating. You felt like you had to tell your story over and over and over. It's frustrating, to be really honest. I don't know that there's any other way around it. Maybe there are better companies than others, but ours, as good as it was pretty frustrating. So not a really great response, to be really honest.
Okay, you know what? Honest response is a great response. We're not here to do anything other than what's honest. Jeff, do you want to take that one?
Sure. So I think for me, I don't want to speak for everybody on here, but I think when you get to a situation where you're organizing and advocating and trying to get as much information as possible, it's sort of a aspect of control that you have because you've lost your house, so you didn't have any control over that. And this is you kind of taking back the control. And I say that because you hear like community organizing and this and that, and you think of like professional community organizers, and that's what they do. I'm not sure about Brad or Jen or Raina's groups, but in mine we had a school teacher, a librarian, electrician. My favorite is a guy who got the post office to bend their knee to him, whose job is to choreograph stage fights, specifically sword fights. So it's not like you have to be in government or in nonprofits or organizing. You just have to be a regular person that wants to do something and take this on. And in doing that, you kind of lean on each other. I always say that it's easy for people to say, and I'm sure you've experienced this too, when people say, "Oh, you lost your house, I'm so sorry." You're like, "Oh, thank you," but they don't understand. But when you talk to people who have, they can empathize in a different manner and they understand what it's like to go through those things. So when you can lean on each other, that sense of community and the community organizing really do help both to rebuild, but also to help you yourself get through the process.
While we're at that, do you mind, Tennis, if you can weigh in as a public official, what did you find worked really well when fire survivors came to you in order to help them through the process? Because you're right on the other side of it, and that's super rough.
Yeah, so I think Altadena is a community that has a lot. I mean, I know it's not uniform, but it has a lot of similar lot sizes. So the types of homes that can go on there, much like Coffee Park, where Jeff lives, and to some extent where Brad lives in his neighborhood, this is going to lend itself well to common designs, and actually some variation. So I think you're going to see, and I would look for those type of solutions. So some other things that you could be doing sooner, and that's hopefully some of these resources are available in the Disaster Resource Center. And that is information on your property, the permit history on your property. And even for some of the older homes, going to the assessor's office to get, and hopefully this is also available in the Resource Center, to get the notes from the assessor, which only the property owner can release. And those can be valuable in the insurance process of demonstrating what was on your property before the disaster occurred. Going to the recorder's office for information about your lot. If you happen to have if you have a subdivision lot, that's going to be easy for the county to track and for your design professionals to use in the rebuild design. If you're in one of the more rural properties that you have a lot created by deed, that's going to be with the recorder's office. And hopefully the county is having dedicated lanes in those offices so that you can get right to it and get the information you need.
Thanks, Dennis. And Riva, do you mind? This is a little bit of a flip too. You were a public official during the Woolsey fire. So it's one of those weird spaces where you're undergoing the disaster, even though you didn't lose your home, but you're still definitely affected by it. And it's normal for people to express their stress towards you. Can you give any advice on how to approach public officials? We're not centering them, but just you have a unique perspective there.
I think it's really important to remember that everybody on the government side really does want to help the community rebuild, the people who are, I'm going to call kind of on the front line of the recovery centers and the one-stop permitting centers. They truly are dedicated to doing everything they can personally do to help move your project forward. They're also traumatized. There's a very high number of county staff who have lost their homes, and other city folks too in the cities that were impacted, their homes as well. I have yet in the Los Angeles area spoken to someone who doesn't know someone who has lost a home. So it's touched all of us in different ways. And they, again, are really trying to help you. When Tennis was speaking, though, did pull up the LA County Assessor's Office, and there is information on their website about how to move forward with all the things you're going to do. I actually spoke personally with the county assessor today, and he and his team are dedicated to try and help everybody get through all of the bureaucratic side of it, which is very complicated. And he is very open, and his staff is very open. So if you have questions, please reach out. But I know I can speak on behalf of the county staff that their hearts are with you, and they really want to help get everybody home as soon as possible.
Thank you, Reba. Next question.
We're gonna talk about the rebuild. So, how did you all personally approach the decision of rebuilding versus relocating?
I'm going to start with Brad.
Yeah, for us, it was never a question that we were going to rebuild, mainly because of the community that we live in. And to be honest with you, we had two small kids at the time, and their elementary school was just up the street, and miraculously, it did not burn down. So they were able to get back into their elementary schools 3 months after the fire, even though it was completely surrounded by devastation. They had air quality monitors up and all that. But our whole goal, and I guess my whole goal in life, was to bring up my family and my kids in a strong, stable community. I want them to know their community. And damn it, a fire was not going to destroy that. And if anything, that damn fire strengthened our community to where my kids now have seen the strength of rebuild in the community. We have new sidewalks to their elementary school, underground power lines, septic to sewer. They have seen our community join forces to rebuild together. When Jennifer Gray Thompson and After the Fire came out and built a new perimeter wall fence around our community, the first thing that ever was rebuilt, they saw hope, they saw vision. And I'll tell you what, my kids are stronger now than they ever were before, along with every other kid in this community. And I think that is why, damn it, if you're not going to rebuild for yourself, rebuild for the future generations, and do it thinking about those future generations. Because if you don't take a silver lining out of this, what are we going to do? So rebuild together, do it together, build your block captain program, do things, think out of the box, be innovative, support each other. If you're underinsured, we all were, work as a team. We had some big funky country lots in our neighborhood. We all had funky country 1970 ranch houses, yet we still found a way to rebuild as a group with a production line that got us in our homes quick. And we still all have unique, really freaking cool, awesome houses that we love. So sorry, got a little passionate there, but
no, I like passion. Just so you all know, Brad asked for all those things that he got, and he's like the leader of that. Like, he came to me and asked for a $500,000 fence, and I was like, no. And then like a day later, I'm like, well, what would that look like? And then all of a sudden, 18 months later, he has one. So do ask for what it is that you need and what you want.
Don't be afraid to ask for help. And
I've started calling it Sherwood Forest.
My kids are in the car and I'm dropping them off at, school, and I'm in the car talking to, CalAm saying, can we please have underground backflow devices? I mean, little things, right? And yes, you can, right? So anyways, be passionate.
It's okay. Raina has her hand up, and then Jeff, after that, do you mind just talking about how it actually functioned with the block captains, with the meetings, with who took responsibility, what the supervisor did after Raina speaks?
Yeah, so really briefly, I just want to say, like, Brad's energy is kind of the energy we need to make any changes. Like Jen was saying earlier, you have to fight your insurance company. You have to fight alongside your city staff and council to move things. And the fact that you have a council member here is like a great sign that they want to be engaged, they want to be helpful, and that is a long-term relationship. It is a marriage on this path. And so I really commend you for showing up to this conversation, and really, really do want you to, like, I see people asking for like underground wiring. Yes, like if things are important to you, you need to be asking for it. And like, you might not get everything, but you might be like Brad and you might get 90% of your list. And so
and right, Raina, and to that point, that's where the block captain program comes into place, because as Jeff has said, we're in the driver's seat. So our county supervisor, your city council member, should be meeting with you or your designee, your block captain or zone captain, once a week for a minimum of 2 hours. And the first thing you do is you guys build a needs assessment for your neighborhoods. And you chop up your area neighborhood zones, you identify your leaders, you just start meeting. Just start meeting once a week at a local restaurant, coffee shop, wherever locally that you can get to. And you demand that you have your county supervisor, your city council person come and lead those meetings. They should be bringing the experts to you. They should be bringing the tennis wicks to you, because it's through you as a block captain or a zone captain that the information is going to get disseminated to all of your neighbors. And guess what that means? You're going to get shit done, and you're going to actually get what you need. So it's so critical to get the block captain, zone captain program up and running. And you need to make sure your elected officials know you're doing it and that they're bought in to support it, because it's also on them for their public service duty to help you.
Yeah,
So for some,
spoke. Oh,
sorry. For some electeds, it makes them nervous. I remember the town manager of Paradise saying, Jen, are you going to organize these angry people against me? And I'm like, no, that's not how this works. These people are your partners and you walk through together. So Jeff, since Brad covered some of the part that I was thinking you could talk about, if you could just quickly go into political, how it does translate into also a bigger political voice. You were able to change some of the laws, or our people from our fires were at the state level. The advocacy piece of it is really huge.
Yeah, so the general idea about advocacy with the block captain group is, as an elected official or as a staff member with a city or county, it's really easy to dismiss an email or a call from one person and be like, okay, I'm doing something else. But when you get an email from somebody that you know represents 3,000 people or 3,500 people or whatever it is, it's like, oh man, I better tackle this. And it got to the point where it turned into kind of the symbiotic relationship that the city council member, the planning director, the now planning director, and the chief building inspector would come to our weekly meetings because we had information, real time, boots on the ground information to be like, hey, this is a problem. You need to fix this. And they would be like, all right, let's figure it out. And I think that's one of the big things that I see as government's role is to facilitate the rebuild and not regulate the rebuild, right? Their job is to kind of, it's a get to yes. How do we get you back in your homes? What do we need to do within reason to get you back in your homes? And so that's in the immediate aftermath. And then long term, one of the issues that we really ran into here in Sonoma County was what we'll call dishonest builders, to the point where one of them is in jail for committing felonies. Basically, it ended up being a Ponzi scheme where they weren't capitalized in an appropriate manner to take on the amount of bills they had, and they would kind of rob Peter to pay Paul, right? So take a down payment to do somebody else's flooring and then keep going around in the circle. What we ended up creating was working with now the state Senate President Pro Tem Mike McGuire was passing a piece of legislation that created a second Class B builder's license, which is you do renovations and flips. You don't do homes. You do renovations and flips, and they're not allowed to do homes going forward. And that's to protect people, because there's going to be a lot of people like, oh yeah, I've done a flip home before. I can do a ground up, and it's like, no, they can't. So that's some of the things, and then advocating. I mean, me and those on this call have been to Washington D.C. and after years of work, we got advocacy. We were able to get a piece of legislation passed through Congress and the Senate, which doesn't happen very often these days. And in December, we were able to do that to help to benefit wildfire survivors. And that's 7 years out from Brad and I's fires. So, it's a constant process, and you can get a lot done, including getting the president to sign a bill to help you out. So
it also keeps the storytellers, the news involved. It's really easy for them to call one group, one block captain group, Coffee Strong or Larkville Estates or Marshall Together or Superior Rising, and say, can you give me this person or that person? Or if they call me, and I can also punt it over to one of those groups and say, would you mind finding this person? They're more likely to continue to tell your story. You really need that. The other thing is that to remember with contractors, that if a contractor will break the law for you and take more than they're supposed to, they will do it for other people too. So the time to rebuild is the time to rebuild, and jumping the line is just, we just hear it time and time again. And it's really a tragic thing to see people lose hundreds of thousands of dollars and have nothing but an empty lot and maybe some rotten trusses. We've seen that. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
if I could just real quick, as an example for the advocacy piece at the local level with with journalists and the press, I know in this kind of situation you may be a little hesitant to interact with the press. You're going through a really emotional time, but as you try to advocate for yourself, they can be extremely, extremely beneficial to your cause. I mentioned the post office earlier. For those of you that don't know, the United States Postal Service it is government, but not. They don't really answer to anybody. And so they can kind of just say, no, we don't want to do that. And we were told that we were going to lose our mailboxes, and they wanted to put in, community mailboxes on a corner. And our residents were not okay with that. Jennifer knows what I always say, which is all I want is what I had before. I don't want anything different or new or better. I just want what I had before in some way, shape, or form. And so we got really upset with that. They were going to take away our mailboxes. And one of our people ended up calling the press, and they picked up the story, and they called the Postmaster General for the Northern California area. And 2 days later, they rescinded that decision because they did not like being asked, why don't you want to give fire survivors the benefit of the doubt? And it's beneficial. I really recommend, getting in good relationships with local press.
Brad, did you want to say something?
Yeah, just on the rebuild, and Jeff started talking about, frauds and scams, and whoever you build with, I would highly recommend a third-party escrow account be established for your funds to be put into, so that there's always a third party assessing the build process. Your builder should never be given money up front. And then also pick a builder who's been there, done this, has helped communities in wildfires. There's probably a lot of builders out there who've done that. So look for builders who have this experience, who understand the insurance process, and then, as Jeff said, really utilize the block captain program to organize a builder's workshop to bring in vetted, approved builders to your community.
Jen, did you already tell the story about you contacting the press in order to get your smoke damage? Maybe you could do that. I love that story.
As somebody who has never utilized the media or press as a tool, and I think initially was quite, I really wanted them to go away when our fire happened. They were everywhere. Later, I found, so we had a restoration company clean up the house. We moved back in because we thought it was all done right. Everyone got sick. We had to fight. We went to the doctor. The insurance company was like, we already did the cleanup. It's your, and so I happened to have talked to a person on the media through various, months of this. And when I told her what was happening, she said, I'd love to do a story on that. I'd love to do a piece on that. And came to my house and walked through the house with us, and focused on my daughter has asthma. And the next thing you know, the insurance company was like, please let us do the hygienist report for you. And, it opened everything up for us. And so I learned a valuable lesson there, and that if you're experiencing it, there's a good chance somebody else is also. So don't ever think something's happening to you alone. That's why the community connection piece is so important, because, when you are grouped together and informed, you can make something happen. But when people feel like they're alone and they're defeated, it's much harder to get something done. And when you use the media as a tool, they can amplify an issue. And shame goes a really long way against companies, predatory behavior. People don't want their company name and faces on the news, and everyone's watching the fire stories. So do think of them at some point when you're in a space where you can use them as a tool, as a friend for you.
I think, Jen, it's the New York Times that came out to your house like a week ago. There is a story about smoke damage. All of these are also on our social media, on Facebook, After the Fire USA, Instagram, LinkedIn. We don't do that Twitter thing. So, okay, next question. Thank you, Jen.
We only have a few minutes left. So just knowing where our community is just fresh on the heels of this tragedy, is there anything that we missed in this conversation that you feel like is important to share with us? or anything that you wish you knew going into the process at this phase?
Why don't we do a 1-minute speed round? We'll start with Jen. We'll do
I
all the
would
panels.
I would love to encourage you if you don't have a therapist and therapy isn't your thing and mental health isn't something that you want to participate in, maybe now's the time. Because I found that I was living on adrenaline and just the shock and trauma of everything. And it took a good year before my body started to just break down. And you can stay tasky and you can avoid and you can stay really busy taking care of your community. Please take care of yourself. If you have some accountability partner where you're calling on each other, are you taking care of yourself? Have you done, even if it's just a walk or a moment alone or whatever it is for you, find a place to do that. You are going to need it. You will not be able to sustain this recovery if you don't take care of yourself. That's
a really good one. Tennis.
Get ready for more information coming at you. It's going to be in a more organized fashion. It's going to get better and better every week. And there's going to be more. But as you can see from my seemingly normal fire surviving colleagues here on the screen, their lives are better. Their communities are tighter. And I think many of us are healthier. To Jen's point, we've either undertaken therapy. I have, because it's traumatic what we're all going through. Even when your life's improving. So just take it one day at a time.
We do call it the worst club with the best people in it. So with that, Raina.
I can't say organize more enough right now. Like this initial phase when you are still running on adrenaline, it's sort of like opposite feedback from what Jen said. But when I was running on adrenaline, this was the moment that I felt like I could catalyze the most. And it's when the most disorganization was happening and people were getting checked out. And I think that getting people on board relatively early in these early days was so helpful in getting our community home as quickly as we could. And it was completely worth it. And sometimes I had to delegate to different people to listen in on different things or, have my husband watch the kids for a while so I could focus on it. But I think it's turned out to get our community turned around quicker.
Thank you. Jeff?
Yeah, I'll second all the mental health things. Don't go through this alone. Lean on other people. But one thing that I would always say is don't rush. I know that there's a sense of urgency and you really want to get back in your home and you want to do everything right now and solve it. You can't. You just logistically and physically can't speed up some of these things, and you're gonna have to wait, is counterintuitive as that sounds. And kind of to Tennis's point, where there's more information coming out, one of the things that we saw is that the county and the city, they're in a learning process too. So things can change. And you don't want to rush into things and maybe make a decision on a home just to fit what they're doing right now when they may loosen requirements later on, and you could have had something different. We saw that a couple of times. So take the time to make decisions in a very thoughtful and direct manner.
Really nice. Riva?
Thank you. Yeah, I would just say that it's okay to not be okay right now. And it's okay to ask for help and it's okay to accept help when people are offering. I know kind of goes against most people's way of doing things, but this is the time and to check on the people that you know and care about, particularly if there's people who live alone, whether they're in their homes or not, just to check on them because it is kind of a community-wide trauma, and definitely sign up for any kind of alert or information that's being pushed out by the city if you're in a city, the county, and as Tennis said, there will be additional information coming, and I promise you will get through this and you will get home again, and take good care of yourselves.
Right. Brad, thank you.
I would definitely say immediately start to divide tasks between you and your partner or whomever you're going through this journey with. Task dividing could look like someone who's in charge of insurance, someone who's in charge of looking for builders, someone who's in charge of community outreach and support. No one person can carry this on their shoulder. Choosing the right builder at the right time is critical, absolutely critical. And do not rush into that process. Your builder is going to be your lifeline to getting back home. That is one of the most important partners you got. Take a vacation. One thing I didn't add to my timeline I put there in the chat was in March, after we selected our builder and did that contract, the family, we went on a 1 week vacation just to take care of ourselves mentally, as Jen said. So important. And last but not least, seeing is believing. Come out, come to Santa Rosa. After the Fire USA has done this with other communities, come visit our neighborhoods, see where we are 7 years after our fire. You're going to be amazed at what can be. In San Diego, you've got communities from the Scripps fire right that closer to you. Go, Google it, find a neighborhood, and go. I did it probably 2 months after our fire because I'm a seer and I need to believe it. I literally drove into a neighborhood in San Diego, got out of my rental car, started walking down a cul-de-sac. A lady was out putting out her trash, and she kind of looked at me weird, like, who's this guy? And I just said, hi, I'm Brad. I'm a Tubbs fire survivor. She immediately came over, gave me a hug, and she says, I'm a Scripps survivor. Come in our neighborhood. And literally, I went into 8 people's homes that morning and learned and saw so much. So reach out for help. We're here to help you. You're going to get home.
And if I could just really quickly wrap it up, thank you all so much for allowing us inside of this very traumatic time in your lives. There's always the day before, which you can't get back, but you do have the future. You can recover, you can rebuild, you can reimagine. It won't be like it was before, but you're not like you were the day before either. You really do build a wonderful community of people. I did not lose my home, but I still found a way to be really useful for the people who did and to help the community. So don't feel like you shouldn't show up for people if you have the ability to do it and the passion to do it. Get in there. They need you, and everybody has a role to play. It really is a communal group project. There are no heroes, no saviors. It's a group project full of really wonderful people, and we have literally hundreds, if not thousands of them ready to support you as you walk through this all the way home.